And I think we're going to start right here. Pondering Guest says, hey, hey guys, Bradley talks a lot about topical links, but I have a question. How are these different to a niche relevant PBN? Also, are these sites generating in traffic or just purely for link building? Well, because I don't know what niche relevant PBNs you're talking about, but because there's, a lot of people that claim that. But what I've found from buying a lot of links from what were called niche relevant PBN links, the content might be relevant that you get the link placed within. Like, in other words, the referring page. So the article that they place the link in that points to your target asset is relevant. But what is the topical relevance, the most prominent topical category of the domain itself, right? So I talk about this almost every week. Let's talk about it again. And it's important because I think you guys all need to recognize how much stuff has changed. In the last year alone, it has changed significantly, guys, because Google's NLP has gotten so good and it's programmed algorithmically to do this now. It used to require manual review, human intervention to be able to do this. The manual spam team at Google would manually review websites at random and look at backlink profiles and be able to determine people were, buying links and all that kind of stuff. And then they would give you a manual penalty. A lot of that is now built out. It's done algorithmically because of Google's NLP has gotten so advanced. And that is precisely, and again, I'm not taking credit for this. I'm giving credit to Eric Lancheres for seeding this idea. In other words, this was where I got the idea to start building what I call semantic links, which are 100% topically relevant links. And I got that idea from him, from this tool right here on Page AI, when he was launching this tool back in the December, around December of last year. At least I think that's when he launched it. Anyways, this is what gave me the idea for semantic links, was this right here. And this tool integrates with Google's NLP API. So it's done automatically. You don't have to put your own API key or whatever. That's why part of the reason why it's so expensive, because every time you run a scan, it's accessing Google's NLP API, the natural language processor, and it costs Eric money. So he passes those costs off to us. And of course, there's a markup. So it's an expensive tool. There's no question, but it's a great tool. This is my favorite SEO tool right now, period. It does the on-page stuff like a million other tools do. It's called on-page AI. But why I like this tool is because of the off-page stuff. None of the other tools have that. And that is this link relevancy tool, which is really important. And then this one here as well, which is the what they call predictive guest post, but now it's also predictive link building. They're very much the same thing. But what this does is these are showing Google's NLP topical categories. Okay, so these are what the categories. This is just an example, but these are topical categories that of Google's own topical categories, right? Does that make sense? So why I brought this up was because Google's NLP categories very closely align with, it's not an exact match. Hold on a minute. Let me grab the link because I've got some client stuff open in another browser. So just give me a minute. Okay, I'm back. All right. So this right here is Majestic's topical trust flow categories. Okay. And so it's very interesting, but if we just go back and take a look at this, you see how it says computers and electronics, computer hardware, computer peripherals. These are Google's topical categories from Google's NLP, okay? Here are Majestic's topical categories, or topical trust flow categories as it's called. So under here, we've got another one, computers, software, programming, hardware. Anyways, if I spent a couple of minutes, I could going through, because some of these are really, really small and it's very difficult sometimes to click on them. But the point that I'm trying to make is there are topical trust flow categories. Majestic's topical trust flow categories are very closely aligned to Google's NLP categories. They're not the exact same, but they're very closely aligned. So how are the links that I build any different than other topically relevant links or niche relevant PBN links, is the question asked, right? Well, this is what I'm getting at. So this tool here, right, and this is where I got the idea to start building what became semantic links, was that Google's NLP will go out, and when first you take your target URL, this is how the tool does it, but it mimics what the Googlebot does, right? So you can plug your target URL in here, and then you can plug in your backlinks that are pointing to that target URL, right? So you can go to Search Console and extract your external backlinks, export your external backlinks, or you can use Ahrefs or Majestic or any sort of backlink analysis tool that you use to extract the backlinks that are pointing to that specific URL. You plug that into this tool. And what it does is it goes and it scans the target URL first, and it classifies or gets Google's NLP categories that Google has determined are the topical categories for that the content of that page. Generally, there's always going to find at least one topical category. Sometimes it finds 2 or 3 topical categories, and very rarely it'll find 4 topical categories. But usually the sweet spot is between 1 to 3 topical categories that Google will assign to that has determined that the content of that page is about. Does that make sense? And so it classifies the content of a page into Google's NLP topical categories. Like I said, generally it's going to be between 1 to 3 categories. Sometimes you'll see 4. Sweet spot is usually around 2 categories. Okay. That's usually what we see the most of. And then what it does is it goes out and scans the backlinks that are pointing to that page. It crawls the backlinks, and then it classifies the topical categories of the content of the referring page, right? And it looks for a match. And if there is, again, if it identified, like in this case, it identified one topical category, and that topical category was not a match for the topical categories that the target URL content was identified as or classified as. Does that make sense? If it finds 2 topical categories and there is a match because the target URL had, Google found 2 or 3 topical categories for this target URL. And apparently this particular link at the page level had 2. Google found 2 topical categories of this page, or classified the content of this page as having 2 topical categories, which happened to be an exact perfect match of the 2 topical categories of this target URL. Does that make sense? So at the first kind of thing is it scans the target page, classifies the content into Google's NLP topical categories, whatever it determines it fits into. Okay. Then it scans the links that are pointing to that page, and it classifies first the referring page, then the topical categories of the domain itself. Does that make sense? And so if there is a match at the referring page level, at least a partial match, then it proceeds to the next step, right? Which is to scan the topical categories of the root domain itself. So what are the most prominent or the primary topical categories of the domain? So site-wide, essentially. And it will determine those 2. And what it's looking for is a relevance match, a full relevance match. And it may be a partial relevance match at the page level and a partial relevance match at the domain level. But what it's obviously the links that are the most topically relevant are going to be the ones that are given full weight, right? The most value. But if there is a mismatch in relevance categories, topical categories at all, then it devalues that link. To what degree it devalues them, I don't know. It probably varies depending on all kinds of different factors. But the point that I'm trying to make is a link is the most valuable if there is a topical relevance match, 100% topical relevance match at both the page level and the referring domain level. Does that make sense? So if in this case, like this link from Diggity Marketing had a 100% perfect topical relevance match at the page level and a 100% topical relevance match at the referring domain level as well. So this one link right here is the most valuable link of this whole lot of links here, right? So then what is the next best links out of these links that are showing? That would be the 1-to-1 match at page level and 2-to-3 match at domain level. Does that make sense? Or 2-to-3 match here would be another one. I don't know why it says no page match there. I'm not sure. But the point that I'm trying to make here is you want topical relevance match 100% if possible, but that's hard to do, or at least a partial relevance match at both the page level and the referring domain level. Because if there is not if the referring domain topical categories aren't a relevance match, then that link has been devalued. Not entirely, doesn't mean that it's completely worthless. It just means that it's not producing as much value as it could be producing if there was also a topical relevance match at both the referring page and referring domain level, right? And so when I first saw this, which was, like I said, I think it was in December, it might've been January, but of this year or December of last year, I was in the process of actually testing all different types of links and link providers, because I was finding the links that I was purchasing and building were not producing the effect that they had even a year ago, right? And that's when I was introduced to this concept. I had been testing for about 3 or 4 months, various link providers and link sources, and my link costs were going up and my results were going down. And I kept trying to figure out why. So I was doing all kinds of testing. And like I said, testing different providers and different types of links and link insertions and guest posts and niche edits and all these different kinds, and testing different providers. I tested real expensive stuff, One Little Web, Get Me Links, Authority Builders, like all these like really expensive link providers. And yet I was not, so my link costs were going up. My results were waning or declining. And so there's that saying that when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? Well, I was in the process of trying to figure all this shit out when Eric was preparing the kind of the traditional internet marketing launch sequence, right? He was sending out emails to prepare to launch this tool or access to his app. And that's when I saw this. And one of the emails that he had sent out was like, have you noticed that your links aren't as effective as they used to be? And I was like, son of a bitch, he's talking directly to me. You know what I mean? And so of course, I've been following Eric for years. I highly respect him. He's been a mentor of mine for many years. So I certainly jumped on the webinar. And when I saw this, I was like, that's the missing component right there. Is I can almost guarantee, without even, I hadn't subscribed to this tool yet, so I didn't get to scan any of this and see with data that was indeed the case. But I just knew that was the problem, right? And so I said that, it's easy to get links, guys, on referring pages that are relevant to your target asset, because that's what a PBN link, to get back to the original question, how are my links any different than a niche relevant PBN? Well, my guess is if you were to subscribe to this tool and go extract some of the backlinks that you purchase from niche relevant PBN providers and plug them into this tool, you'll see that you might get a partial match or even 100% page relevance match at the page level. But the domain level relevance match is generally not going to be there. You might have found some other providers that, I'm not saying I'm the only provider in the world that provides niche relevant PBN links. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying I tested dozens and dozens of providers, all different kinds of marketplaces and everything. And every single one of them that advertised niche relevant PBN links, if I went to scan them with this, the topical categories were not a match, at least not at the domain level. At the page level, yes, because again, guys, you buy links, you should always get page level relevance match, period, full stop, or else your links are worthless anyways, right? At least at the page level, it should be relevant. And that's been like standard operating procedure in the SEO world for years. But it's a lot harder to get a link that is also a topical relevance match at the domain level, whatever the most prominent categories of the domain are. Why? Because most link providers are selling links on multi-topic PBNs so that they can maximize the revenue from their PBN, their domains that they purchased, right? That's why the PBN providers sell most of the time links based on traditional metrics, which I could care less about now, right? I couldn't care less about, like Ahref metrics or Moz metrics or traffic metrics. Now, traffic metrics, there's something to be said about that. But Ahref metrics or Moz metrics, so PA and DA, so page authority, domain authority, or UR and DR, so URL rating and domain rating, like that has nothing, it has no measure of topical relevance whatsoever. Those are third-party proprietary metrics based on what their own internal algorithms have determined are link quality and link quantity. That's it. There's no topical relevance measure there either. Now, to be clear, I use Majestic because Majestic has topical trust flow categories. Google doesn't give a shit about Majestic's metrics either. So it's not that Majestic metrics are intertwined with Google, because they're not. Google doesn't care about Majestic trust flow and citation flow, which are Majestic's primary metrics. Google doesn't care about that either. But as I mentioned, Majestic's topical trust flow categories, which is what I care about, very closely aligns with Google's NLP categories. So that's why when I first saw this tool and I was like, that's the missing component, is domain level relevance. I'm not getting that. I certainly subscribed to the tool. I'm still a subscriber today. And I started plugging my backlinks in. And sure enough, plain as day, the data doesn't lie. I was seeing a lot of these kind of, where there's a match at the page level, but not at the domain level. In other words, I was getting partial relevance match, but not full relevance match. And so those links were, and a lot of these, I mean, guys, I'm talking about, buying links from $150 to $400 for one link, one guest post link, or one link insertion or something like that, like spending hundreds of dollars for one damn link and getting page level relevance match, but not a domain level relevance match. So that link has been, again, not entire. It's been, the link is not as strong as it could have been, right? It's lost some of its strength because it does not have a domain level relevance match. And so when I saw that, I was like, that's what I'm missing. I subscribed to this tool. I started testing, and sure enough, that's what I found. A lot of the links that I was purchasing were, they'll sell you on links that have, DR of 62 and traffic metrics of 5,000. Yeah, maybe traffic metrics of 5,000 to the domain itself, but not to your post. So I figured, okay, look, I don't care about those kind of metrics anymore. Once I started testing, and I started testing topical relevance, and that's why I started hunting down domains that already had backlinks pointing to the domains that I could determine what the topical categories of the domain is by using Majestic's, or at least the topical categories of the external backlink profile by using Majestic's tool. And I could very quickly start to identify domains that had topical trust flow in the categories that I needed it to be in. And then I would purchase a domain, publish a website, single page, at least initially, all I did was publish single page HTML sites on the domain that I purchased that already had backlink profile in the appropriate topical category that I needed. And what happens is by publishing a single page HTML site on the domain, it satisfies both the page level relevance and the domain level relevance 100% all in one fell swoop, because the referring page is the referring domain. Does that make sense? And so when I started testing that, and then I started, again, using the predictive guest post or predictive link building tool at the time that didn't have a predictive link building tool, it was just called predictive guest post. I could take the content and scan it before even publishing the article or publishing the site and make sure that I had topical category match, 100% relevance match. And when I started doing that, now all of a sudden, these domains that I was picking up for $10 to $15 to register for a year, and then paying my content team to generate an article, and then paying my HTML building team to publish the site for me, I for a fraction of the cost of a guest post and a high dollar guest post, I was getting better results. Does that make sense? Because again, I had 100% page level and domain level relevance match. So when I started building and for a long time, I didn't, even this year, for many months, I did not build any PBNs at all, because I got away from using PBNs because of what I just described. Most PBN providers, they buy domains based upon traditional metrics, URDR, PADA, whatever, has nothing to do with relevance. And then they slap up a site and put 18 categories on it so that they can sell links in all these different categories based on those metrics that have no factor or bearing on relevance, topical relevance. And yes, they'll sell you a post that's relevant, page level relevance. But what about the domain? What are the most prominent or primary topical categories of the domain? And so even those niche relevant PBN providers that I was testing, and I would take their links and plug them into this tool, and sure enough, I'd have page level relevance match, but not domain level relevance match. And not only that, but I could go scan the backlinks of the domains that my links were placed on, and I could look at the topical trust flow categories of the backlink, the external backlink profile pointing to the PBN domain that I had purchased a link on, and the total mismatch of topical trust flow categories. It wasn't anything even related to the topical trust flow or the NLP categories that Google determined for that niche relevant PBN. In other words, they might have content on the site that is relevant to what it's linking to my target assets, but the external backlink profile that was pointing to that domain was in a total mismatch category, topical category. And why? Because they didn't buy the domain based on topical relevance. They bought the domain based on traditional metrics. Does that make sense? So they bought the domain based on traditional metrics. So DR, PADA, URDR, etc. And then they put whatever topical category they want, even a niche relevant PBN, they put, home construction or home services on there, and they'll sell links to plumbers and HVAC and tree service contractors and everything else. But because the former content of the domain was about something entirely different, because they bought the domain based on traditional metrics, not on topical relevance, then when you go to analyze the backlinks that I purchased on that to be published on that PBN, I go scan them with Majestic and find out that topical trust flow categories were a complete mismatch. So like a home service contractor PBN, it should have business, construction, and maintenance topical trust flow category. Full stop. That's this one right here. Right there, topical trust flow category, right? That would be suitable for all different kinds of home service contractors. But I would go scan the PBN backlinks and I'd look at what are the most prominent topical trust flow category, and it would be something like completely irrelevant. And so again, you're buying links that there might be some relevance match from the content, but what about the external links pointing at it? So all of that, to get back to the question, I know I spent a lot of time on that question, but it's a good one and it comes up often. Okay. I get this question all the time, actually. And so the point that I'm trying to make about this is the links that I sell are on domains that are in the appropriate topical trust flow category for what they're going to be linking to. And then every post that I publish on that site, before I ever sell a link from that site, we publish 30, 40, 50 posts sometimes, all around the same topic, right? So the topical trust flow categories are relevant because I buy domains that are in the appropriate topical trust flow categories that I need them to be in. And then the former content was in that exact category or a closely related category so that the topical trust flow is in the appropriate category, right? So that means I can buy a X plumber site and I can use it for HVAC, or I could use it for a roofer because the inbound link profile is still in a related category, a very closely related category. It might not be an exact match, but the topical trust flow category should be business, construction, and maintenance in this example's case, right? And then I'll publish, if I'm going to use it for an HVAC site, I'm going to publish 30 posts on the site that are going to be all about HVAC topics. So now, then I'll start, then once the site's indexed, by the way, the other part of the question was, do these sites receive real traffic? Yes, I submit them to Search Console. I get them indexed. And within a week, they start receiving natural organic traffic. No shit. And I've got screenshots of that on my gig page on Vetted, where I show you screenshots for both trust flow values, topical trust flow categories, and then Search Console data showing the actual organic traffic of some of these sites. So then once I get them published or get the sites put up, I get them indexed and they start receiving natural organic traffic. Then I'll start selling links or posts on those. And so that what happens is we end up with this, right? The links from those niche relevant PBNs give you 100% page relevance and domain relevance match. So the links are very, very effective, if that makes sense. So that's part of, I mean, I thought it was a great question, but that is precisely why if you just take your time and again, go subscribe to this tool, even for a month, it's expensive, but go try it. If you've been buying niche relevant PBNs from other providers, I'm not saying that I'm the only one that sells them. There might be some others out there. I'm sure there are, but I didn't find any. If I had, I probably would have never started my own link building business. Does that make sense? I did it out of necessity. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Which plan would you need? The highest, the lowest?
Well, however many credits you think you're going to burn up. It's an expensive tool. There's no question.
Features don't matter on that one.
It's a good tool.
What you used it, right?
What's that?
The features don't matter too much for what you're using it at the moment, just the credits.
Yeah, I mean, again, the link relevancy, predictive guest posts and predictive link building, those are the ones that integrate directly with NLP. I mean, the on-page factors do too, but I'm talking about specifically looking and analyzing backlink profiles. That's what I use it for. Although, like I said, that I do like, it's got an AI writing assistant as part of it now, guys. And it does keyword research and outline builder and all that kind of stuff too. So it's a great tool. It's become my favorite tool.